Hey everybody, we're going to do a little quick module here about craft shows. Probably going to be a couple of these different modules. We'll go into a little bit deeper dive on some other stuff, but just basically a quick overview of kind of how I've set up in the past for craft shows, some things I've thought about, and kind of how I set my booth up at different locations. So let's get started. So this is basically a setup from one of my shows that I've done. And again, I set up it kind of differently depending on where I'm at. And you should too if you're at a more of a themed type show. Obviously, you want your themed type products to be, more easily accessible and easily viewed. So this is just one of my setups. This is not how I started. So I've heard this before, and I know a lot of people have said it, and this really holds true, is don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle or end. I've done a lot of shows, and this is kind of where I've gotten to thus far. So don't expect it to look like this. And mine even looks different now to this day than it did in this picture. So this is kind of where I started. See? So don't worry about it. And I did very well even at a show like this. This was an early part of the show. We were just setting up. That's why you don't see it. Wound up being quite a few people around. But just a simple sign, a simple tent, and your products is really all you need. Now, something I learned early on is I had entirely too many different products at this particular setup here. So that's something you want to keep in mind as far as what products you want to take to what show. Again, themed products, you want to take as many of those type things as you can, but you also want to think about what all products you do want to actually take. So one of the things that I did is I think about my pricing. I call it impulse pricing. It works the same type way as you've gone into a gas station. There are impulse buys that you can get just right when you see them, like usually right at the counter, end caps, stuff like that. Well, same concept applies. You want to make sure that you have things priced to where you can have a sale really quick that's fairly cheap, something they can grab, toss in their bag or whatever, or decide that they want it right then. Those are your products anywhere from $1.99 to $7, $8, $10. Something they can get, to pretty quick. And then you want to also have your more expensive items either there or available for pre-order. And I'll get into that probably in a later talk. But this is kind of a setup that I had where it's pretty clear that this was kind of a Mother's Day. It was actually preceding Mother's Day, an event. That's why I had a bunch of mom and dad stuff for Mother's Day. Keep in mind, not everybody has both parents. That's the reason I added some dad stuff. So anyway, so this was a themed event. Now I do have additional things that do sell well for me at any event, no matter what the theme is. So I usually have those along for the ride as well. So, but think about your pricing. And there's another thing having to do with pricing I wanted to touch on. And this is a kind of a controversial thing. I say controversial. It's not really controversial as much as there's a lot of different opinions. If you will notice in my setup here, you don't see any prices. Everything on this table is not the same price. Now, you have to make the decision on how you want to do this. This is just the way I do it. You can do it any way you'd like. You can have a price sheet with everything on it. You can put prices on your product. The reason I don't is because I like to talk to people. And I have found over several different craft shows that a lot of times when you just have your price on products, people will walk up, look at the price from afar sometimes, and never even come into your booth. And I think unless you're just not comfortable with selling, and I mean selling yourself, selling your product, then maybe you do want to put prices on it. But I don't. I like to sell my product. I like to sell additional products as well. So I prefer them to have to come and ask me what the price is. Does that lose some people for me? Probably. There's no way for me to know for sure, but for me, it tends to work better because I like to talk and I like to sell. So think about that whenever you're thinking about whether or not you want to price everything. You can price everything for your benefit in kind of a chronological order, or increasing in price from the front to the back, or just something where you can remember all your prices, because the worst thing you want to do is give somebody a price and they come back 30, 40 minutes later and you tell them a different price. That would be terrible. So whatever works best for you on that. This is just the way I do it. So my focus in that is actually getting them into my booth. I want them to come into my booth. So asking for the price is one way. And then I personally, just because of certain products I sell, I have another way that I bring people into my booth. And that's my little station here. I call this my drinkers and smokers section, because I have some stuff for people that drink, like the wine holder thing you see there. And I have some different wine caddies that I make, bottle openers. But the way I bring them into the booth with this is, again, if you look at the first shot here, you see that to come into my booth, you actually have to come into it. I've got it arranged to where you have to enter my booth and you're surrounded by my products. That's on purpose. It does have limitations though. Keep that in mind. You're usually only available, all you have available is usually like a 10 by 10, maybe 10 by 15 in most of your shows. So you're going to have limited space for multiple people to come into your booth. Having said that, usually you're stacked right on top of each other. So if you tried to do it the other way in a U and had you inside and them on the outside, you're limited on space for them to be able to look around your sides anyway. So I prefer to do it like this so I can actually bring them in. So I have this set up here, and one of the things that I sell a lot of is my whiskey smokers. So I have a display where I actually have a setup, not real whiskey. It's just, I usually have apple juice or something in a glass. And I have a demonstration whiskey smoker that I've used. Man, I've probably got a couple of hundred torches on it, and it's still in great shape. For one, that shows the longevity of the smoker, but it allows me to do a demonstration. Of course, there's smoke involved, so keep that in mind if you're in an indoor event. But I have found doing that, I will have people that might not have even come by my booth actually come by my booth to check that out. And some I have had absolutely just bought these because they saw it and they thought it was neat. They'd seen it at a restaurant somewhere. They have a friend, they have a, mother, father, whatever, cousin that drinks whiskey, and they end up buying it for them for a present. So I've been very successful at selling these. The design for these, my buddy Hamilton Dilbeck, he actually came up with this. And I've got these. He actually had the same experience. He couldn't keep these in stock when he was selling them. So they sell very well. Again, your area is going to completely depend on what sells for you. These for me sell well. They might not sell well for you in your area. I do take these and I laser engrave, different little things on them, which they all pretty much do roughly about the same. There's not one that outperforms the other, but anyway. So I get them into my booth that way, and it starts a conversation, and I try to upsell or sell them, something else. So this is where I talked about earlier about prices. This is one of my early shows where I did have the price on my boards. I had the board set up like this. I had the U shape, if you'll notice here, where I actually was in the middle, here in the middle, and had my booths around me. Now, this was a totally different setup. It worked for this location because I had plenty of room on the sides where people could walk around. But having to do this again, I probably would have set it up similar to the one you saw before, because I have found that this one does not allow people to come into your booth as well. And I think that works a lot better. This one I also, and this brings up another point. For those of you that do laser engravings, CNC is not practical to bring with you to a show, for obvious reasons. If you do CNC work, dust collection and blah blah blah. So, but a laser engraver could be a possibility. It completely depends on where you're at, what kind of power you have, ventilation, and so on and so forth. I did take my small laser engraver to this event, This event I actually did in another state for a couple of years, and I did very well at it. That's why I kept going back. It was about 11-hour drive for me. But if you'll notice at the top of my shelf up there, and I don't know if this pointer's working and pointing at this or not, but in any case, the top of the shelf up there, I've got some drawings. Those are files that I brought with me that anybody could get engraved on any one of these cutting boards. Mainly the cheaper ones is what a lot of people wanted to engrave stuff on. But every file that I had is something I could do anywhere from about 15 minutes or quicker. Over 15 minutes, they're not going to want to hang out. 15 minutes, not a big deal. You take their order, go ahead and take their money, and they can come back and get it after they finish looking around. So I just had several different ones. You probably can't see these very well, I think, from here. But anyway, they have specific stuff for that area, hunting and fishing. And anyway, so you can do stuff like that. It's hit or miss whether it works. It's hit or miss whether or not you can actually have something like that, or if you even have power. So those of you that do laser engravings, it is an option. It worked well. I'm not going to say it worked great, because for me, I think I only engraved maybe 3 things that entire weekend. So probably would have been okay if I didn't take it. So just think about that. Personalized stuff for special orders. But what you can do, and here's those things right here. If you can see, I've got several different things that people had available. But personalization and special order on site, those have also done pretty well for me. So these are just some examples here of my football, soccer, and baseball. They basically come as you see them without names. And what somebody can do is, I'm not going to bring my CNC with me, but I can go ahead and take an order, take payment for it, and then I can do this when I get back to the shop, and then I can ship those out. Keep in mind, when you're doing this, you need to include your customization, and you also need to have some idea of a shipping cost. I usually just did an average shipping cost of about $12. Now, would that be a little more, a little less at some places? It would, depending on where I was shipping it. But most of the time it evened out, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. I use ShipStation and a Pirate Ship, so I get pretty good deals on shipping things. So it's not too bad. But you can absolutely take special orders. I'll go into probably another one of these, and we'll go into special orders a little bit more and what makes sense. But yeah, stuff like this, you can absolutely just do names, little dates and stuff like that, and you can take a special order on, at the event, and then go back and do it later. That's all I've got for this one. So hopefully we're going to do another module on this, maybe a little more in depth. But anyway, I hope you got some value out of that. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message in Sawdust, and we'll see you on the next one.